Although tonight's meeting is being held as a virtual meeting due to the declared emergency, this meeting may be streamed live as well as recorded and published on the Southwest Middlesex YouTube channel and website. We begin this gathering by acknowledging that the land upon which we meet is the traditional territory of First Nations people. We convey our respect to our Indigenous neighbors and thank them for their contributions to our culture, our community, our past, and the partnerships that we will share in the future. We commit to a continued journey of listening, learning, and building relationships. Council, is there any pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Yes, I see two hands up. Councillor Cow, first, your conflict, Councillor Cow?
I've submitted my paperwork already through to staff for my conflict.
Okay, all right. And Councillor McGill, you have a conflict as well?
Well, mine's just the bylaw 2021-050 McFarland Drain Swanbag Culvert, because I will be assessed on that.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. Item number 3, Council, in your agenda. The agenda has been circulated before you. Are there any additions that you wish to make? Yes, Councillor Cowell.
I would request that for the item under administration that we deal with council vacancy option 1 separately from the other options, please, or all of the options separately and not as a whole. And I'd like to make that motion to pass the agenda with that change.
All right, okay.
I'll second that, Mayor Mayhew.
Okay, thank you. We can vote in favor. Yes, Councillor Vink, yes, go ahead. Councillor Vink, you have your hand
Mayor
up.
Allen, Mayor Allen, I didn't understand what just went on here.
Yep, we can clarify it in the administration report. There was options given to us, and they would like to deal with option 1 separately, so that they could entertain, that they could deal with, it would include Councillor Cowell in discussions of the other options. Is that the fair interpretation of that, Krista? Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Okay, there has been a suggestion. Council, the only other thing I would like to do, if we could move the bylaws in the agenda prior to going into closed session, it would convenience the public as well. And we will call that. We are going to separate option 1 out of an administration's report, and we will move the bylaws up in the agenda. All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Carried. We will begin with delegations. We have Kelsey McDonald with us this evening. Kelsey, are you with us? I see your picture here. If you'd like to unmute yourself, Kelsey, how are you?
Good, and yourselves?
I'm very well. Thank you for joining us. Kelsey, you're going to speak to us about an ATV club. I understand that you're from the Dutton region. And Kelsey, we have a very heavy agenda tonight. We are delighted to have you with us, but if you could kind of focus on 10 minutes or under, it would be really appreciated, okay?
Well, seeing as Dunwich has the same rule, I've had lots of practice, so.
Okay, no problem. Well, listen, you make yourself right at home, feel comfortable. You're welcome in our chambers, and thank you for being with us, and I'll let you have the floor.
Right on. Well, thank you all for coming, or I guess thank you all for having me. I apologize. It's been a long day. So I'm looking to start up or move into Southwest Middlesex to have access to the roads within the municipality. And so what we're basically asking for is every road in Southwest Middlesex. It sounds like a big ask, and we may not get, but that's what I'm asking for, and we are willing to work with what we have, or what is made available to us. We know when it comes to county roads, dealing with Elgin in the past, that they may not be on the same page as municipality. So in that case, if we do get county permission, then we'll work with it. If not, we will need access in and out of hamlets. That's all I'm asking for, really. So some background. I have been at this now for 3 years. Been doing this quad stuff. We set it up in Dunwich probably back in 2018. And that was actually with Bill Menzie, the bylaw officer. He wrote up all our bylaws. And I've worked with Bill on quite a bit as well. Again, I'm insured. I have my own, it's not a limited company, but it's a non-for-profit. So we are insured that way. We ask people when they join, they must give us their driver's license, insurance, and what's the one other thing? Sorry, it's been a while since I've done it. Driver's license, insurance, and the make, model, and whatnot of their quad, plus all their information. So if, Bill has an issue or one of you guys has an issue, say a townsperson calls you and says, hey, I just seen this quad fly by and it's got your sticker on it. Who the hell was it? So we can look in our records and go, well, so-and-so, and send somebody to have a talk with them. I am fully aware that the province legislated to open up roads unless banned by municipalities, whereas it was the opposite before, where they banned them by default and the municipalities had to open them. So again, the final call does rest on the municipalities, and I'm here in front of you. There's not much more I can really explain without you guys asking me all the questions that you guys have, because I'll certainly be able to answer them a lot better than me babbling on for the next 8 to 10 minutes.
That's good. Kelsey, thank you very much. And I'm sure I see some movement of counselors' hands already. So we'll begin the question process. And yes, Councillor Cal, address your question through the chair to Kelsey.
This is just through the chair to Kelsey. This is a bit of background. In the past, there had been some interest in an ATV group in Southwest Middlesex, and for the most part, our council did support this. The County of Middlesex does not support it, and we were one of the only municipalities in Middlesex County that was willing to support it. And I know that our Director of Operations, Greg Storms, made a lot of headway on this in getting this considered. So I'd really love to hear where we stand right now. I know we did pass a bylaw, and it was because we were waiting for someone, I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Storms, but we were waiting for someone like you to come around with a group that did have all of these boxes checked with regards to insurance and licensing and things like that. So with the permission of the chair, I'd like to hear from Mr. Storms about the progress that we've made and where we sit with being able to support Mr. McConnell.
Thank you, Councillor Cal. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, and thank you, and through you, Alan. Councillor Cowell is correct. I mean, we have spent a fair bit of time working with this file. And as you recall, when the province changed the rules, council then implemented a bylaw that basically prohibited the use until such time that a club would come forward, and that the key requirements of that club, which was insurance, permits, etc., and the formation of actually a group itself would come forward with interest in using the local road system itself. So the other thing that comes into play here is that there is a will to have access to the hamlets. There's no doubt, just to run in for gas, etc., that type of thing, and maybe patronize some restaurants. The county itself has prohibited the use as well on their own road system, but at the same time has mentioned that they would still be open to the question. I don't know what the answer would be, but certainly we can pose the question moving forward. So I have met with Kelsey and his group. It's probably been a couple months now, right, Kelsey? And the group has come to the table as a club and are willing to basically match the requirements that we had moving forward. We would still need to enact a bylaw. And there was some questions raised the first time this was raised at council with regards to some level of public involvement. And that was the other thing that was raised when we originally had this conversation at council. So do commend Kelsey on his organizational skills and getting everybody together here to make this presentation. And that just gives you a brief update from my end and my dealings with this particular group.
Thank you, Greg, very much. And Councillor Vink, go ahead. Your question?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Allen, to either Kelsey or Greg. Would there be a time limitation? I mean, by that you would only be able to drive the ATV, say, 8 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night?
So what we done in Dunwich was basically hunting rules is half hour before sunrise, half hour before half hour after sunset. So in the daylight.
Okay, thank you, Kelsey. I'm sure that answered your question, Martin.
Yes.
Council, any further questions? Yes, Deputy Mayor Wilkins.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. Kelsey, you did mention a bit about Elgin County. Where exactly does the county over there stand on this issue? Are you allowed on their roads or not? It wasn't really clear for me.
No, when it comes to the municipality of Dunwich, we are allowed on municipal roads, not county, because the county has put their foot down, said the same thing as, well, sorry, not the same thing as Middlesex. Middlesex is willing to play ball. Elgin County, or the county of Elgin, is not.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation tonight.
Okay, thank you. Council, we can do a couple of things here. We can receive this information from Mr. McConnell as information, or we can direct staff to bring us back a finalized report for consideration. I'll ask council what your wish is on this. Would you like to receive this for information, or would you like to have something directed in the terms of staff working on this? Councillor Cal.
I would like to see that staff come back with a proposal on how we can make this work with the Glencoe ATV group. Please, I'd make that motion.
Okay, yeah. I just want to clarify one thing with Kelsey. The word Glencoe ATV group, and Kelsey, are you looking for a separate group unto itself or a combined group with Dutton? Or they have a relationship with each other?
Probably. So how it's going to work is we don't actually operate in Dutton anymore because the roads are opened up. So it would strictly be dealing with Southwest Middlesex.
Okay.
There was talk that we were going to go into West Elgin, but they actually just opened it right up. So I was actually going to change, if this was going to go, I was going to change the name of the club to the Southwest Middlesex.
Okay. The Southwest Middlesex Club, and that would accommodate that. Councillor Cal, is that fine with you to use the Southwest Middlesex Club? Is there a seconder for Councillor Cal's motion? I'll call again. Is there a seconder? Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Wilkins' hand came up first. And council, I'll call for questions. And you can be directed through the chair to Greg or Kelsey.
And really quickly, if you guys have any more questions after this, Denny does have my email, so you guys can get a hold of me. So any further questions after this, please don't be afraid to get a hold of me. We are nothing but transparent.
Okay, thank you. Council, I'll call the question. All in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you very much, Kelsey. I think you did her. You did it in 9 minutes, so you were pretty good. Okay, you just got in by the wire there. Thank you very much.
And thank you to everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you. Council, item number 4B is corridor revision, the Switzer drain. We will be going into corridor revision, And I would like on here, if I could have Councillor McGill, Councillor Cowell, Deputy Mayor and the Mayor, and Councillor Vink on that, I would appreciate it. Council, I have a choice of having either 3 people on this quarter revision, or I can have 5, and I've chosen 5. Are all willing to stand? Thank you
Yes.
very much.
Yes,
Yep, and may I have a motion that the members I've suggested be appointed as to the quarter revision for the Switzer Drain, McLean Switzer branch? And council, if I could add to that, that the mayor be the chair. Councilor McGill, you have a question?
No, I would move that motion.
Okay, thank you very much. And a seconder for that, please. Councillor Cowell's hand I saw first. Questions? All in favor? Please raise your hand. Okay, motion is carried unanimously. We'll call the Court of Revision together at 7:16. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Seeing none, we will move on. The purpose of this Court of Revision is clearly defined by statutory powers and procedures. Our purpose here is to discuss any requests to reallocate funds in the drainage schedule of this drain. We have a process. To begin, the Switzer Drain, if I could ask Denny if he's present. Denny, the order of appeals, have there been any? Or Jill, if Denny, have you received any order of appeals that have been received in the proper manner as defined under the Drainage Act?
We did receive one appeal from Reen Minima.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, that could be,
So we have one appeal from Reen Minima. If Spreed Engineering, Mike DeVos is very pleased to have you with us, Mike. If you'd like to take us by the hand and work us through this, and we will follow the procedures as outlined under the Court of Revision. And Mike, please take the floor and advise us how you have allocated costs.
Okay.
Yes, Jill, before you begin, Jill, yes, a concern there, Jill?
I just thought perhaps I could read out the appeal that was submitted.
Yes, by all means.
Okay, so we received a written appeal from Reen Minima, as Denny noted. It's dated October 1st, and it says, with respect and without prejudice to whom it may concern, I appeal the construction and maintenance assessment for Switzer Drain, McLean Switzer Branch 2021, signed Reen Minima on behalf of Reen Minima Farms.
Thank you, Jill, very much for that, and I appreciate you advising me of that. Mike, go ahead, if you would, please, at your leisure.
Okay, if I could share my screen. Gives me that ability. Okay, so you should see some calculations and breakdown of how we calculated the assessments for this drain. Is that visible to the court?
It is. Thank you, Mike.
Okay, the cost of this drain is $81,000. It is an enclosure, so for a 300-meter drain, it's fairly expensive. The typical way that we calculate assessments on enclosures is we use the value of a cleanout or 2 cleanouts, depending upon the situation. In this particular case, there was a cleanout completed in 2020, so very recently. And for that purpose, we've decided it would be more appropriate to assess one future cleanout rather than two. The Switzer drain, for instance, in the last report, it hadn't been cleaned out in quite some time and needed some work, so it was assessed for two cleanouts. In this case, it is one cleanout in order to calculate the outlet assessments. The other thing that happens when in enclosures is that there is no grant available to the outletting owners on an enclosure project through the Ministry of Agriculture and Food. So we have to take the benefit rate, which in this case would be 60%, that 0.6 here. It gets boosted to 73.3% to take into consideration that the grant is being lost by the outletting owners, where on a normal situation, if it was a new report to clean out the ditch, or if it was maintenance work to clean out the ditch, there would be grant available. So the rate of benefit is boosted to account for that. The clean out cost, we used $11 a meter estimated value for that, which generated $3,290 plus $60 interest in HST, for a total of $3,350 estimated value for that work that would be required at some point in the future. At 73.3%, that generates $2,460 in benefit and $890 in outlet. That calculation is done first, and then we subtract the amount of that to get the leftover cost, which is all extra cost above and beyond because of the enclosure, which is assessed at 100% to the minimum farm at $77,650. So we then take the total of the $890 in outlet and we assess it over the watershed. And in this case, there are 7 properties and one road involved that would be upstream of that point. And the outlet, that $890, is distributed to those properties based on their acreage and the location factors and runoff factors to adjust that area up or down based on the type of property that they have. So the numbers in this case were $30, $91, $438, $62, $34, $118, $69, $48, with that $24.60 showing up as regular benefit, the $77,650 is special benefit for the enclosure. So that is a relatively more straightforward project in this case because it's a limited scope of what's happening. But that is the way that the calculation is done. And if there's questions from the court or from the appellant, I would be more than happy to try to answer those.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that information. We will now go to the one appellant, Mr. Minima, if he's present. If he could give us the reason for his objections and his arguments for, we would appreciate it at this time. It's his opportunity to speak. Mr. Minima, if you're with us, you're certainly welcome to join us.
Mr. Minima is not present.
Okay, he's not. All right, thank you very much, Denny. Mike, I have one question. In the appeal that was given, it seemed to lack detail in the reasons for his objection. Is this unusual? Is there generally some dialogue as to when that appeal comes in? Is it generally fact-based, or is it just a statement that he is object? I was surprised that there wasn't more detail in the communication that we received. Is that normal?
I would say both are normal. I've seen many appeals that aren't specific, and that those ones are generally usually addressed during the court, though. Those people would normally attend and verbalize their reasons. And I've also seen written submissions that do have more detail.
Okay, thank you. Council, we'll open up to questions from you. If we can go back to a full screen, Jill, then I can see everybody. That's great. And council, certainly, if you'd like to ask any questions regarding this drain through the chair. Yes, Martin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. To whoever wants to answer this, in light of the fact that the person that asked for the section 76, I believe it was, appealed, what happens now?
It's a decision of council, and then, but I'll let Andrew answer that. Go ahead, Andrew.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that it would be a decision of the court if that is something that would be adjusted. However, there is some question as to how to adjust it, and what would that look like? What is fair? What isn't fair?
Okay, yes, and Greg, I'm sure you'd have something to add to this as well. Go ahead.
Well, I guess I through you, Mayor, I'd just make comment with regards to the question that was asked, which was basically what would happen if the court, didn't make a decision tonight or made a decision tonight. I mean, the people associated with this drain could appeal the decision tonight, and that would end up at the tribunal. So,
okay,
it wouldn't be finalized tonight. If council made a choice to reduce the assessment or and such, even if and Andrew, you can correct me, but even if the requester that appealed tonight could further appeal this decision of this court.
Okay, so there are mechanics in place for it to go through a process to a higher level. Yes, council or committee, any other further questions? I'll give you a minute there. Seeing none, the deliberations appear to be over. I see no more hands coming up here. We're at a point of this process where a decision of this court of revision is to be made. There is a recommendation before you that the assessment as levied by Sprite Associates and adopted by provincial law 2177 to pay for drainage works known as the Switzer Drain, McLean Switzer Branch be confirmed. Would someone entertain that motion? Councillor McGill, thank you. Deputy Mayor Wilkins, thank you for your second on that. Discussion, council. Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? All opposed? Carried. With no further business, the chair will declare the Court of Revision adjourned at 7:28. We now have a motion that is required. The council accept the engineer's report in reference to the, oh, no, not that one. Okay, sorry about that. We've got that. 4C, Andrew, you're on deck again here regarding the Robinson drain. If you could, the engineer's report, this will be Brandon Widner is delivering this report. Is that correct, Andrew?
Yes,
Okay.
I think he's present. I hope he's present for that.
Yeah, okay. Andrew, we'll call for your attendance if you're here. Thank you. Brandon, how are you this evening?
Good.
Good. Brandon, we're dealing with the Robinson drain here. If you could walk us through this, at this time, we would appreciate it.
Okay, so tonight we have the Robinson Drain, and for intensive purposes, this is just on the west side of Newberry. It actually involves Newberry. There's two parts of the Robinson Drain. There's an open portion and a closed portion. Tonight we're dealing with the closed portion. When you look at the history of the Robinson Drain, our firm has been involved with it for some time. So in 1986, that's when the closed portion was reconstructed. It was done by Tony DeVos at that time. And essentially it was installation of 334 meters of some 14-inch tile. The drain was later worked on by Mike DeVos in 2004, and that was a reconstruction of the open ditch, which leads down to the Government 5-6 drain and runs through the north part of Newberry. It also included, I believe, some works at the time to deal with the pollution control plant. So we received a request from McCann Brothers Limited, which is operated by the Walsh family. As you guys have seen, they've signed multiple requests in this area over the last couple of years. They own the farm on Coltsfoot Drive on the south side of the road, across from what would be the old Fennel feedlot. This farm is slated to be tiled next spring. The outlet, again, is from 1986, when the Walshes investigated it with their tiler. There was some concerns that the existing drain was not deep enough to drain the back area adjacent to the woodlot. This farm has been quite wet for a number of years, and it was exceptionally wet this summer, which pushed this project forward. So we do have an existing drain in here from 1986, and that drain appears to be functioning fine, but we can improve it somewhat. So we had a meeting in August 30th of this year to discuss proposal, and all owners were essentially on board. Now, there's not too many owners on this drain, but there are some. There is two landowners from Newberry, Mr. Bill Gillette and a company called Red Devon's Grass-Fed Organics, which is operated by the Keatings, which are also a landowner in Southwest Middlesex and also on the drain. As well as there's another Gillette property, which is in Southwest Middlesex. The Gillettes were present. They understood what was going on. Mr. Keating later provided information which indicated that all of his land was recently tiled a couple years ago. But when they did tile, they ran their own main as well. So the proposal is that we twin the existing with a new 16-inch concrete tile. The length of the project is 341 meters. It's going to run immediately adjacent to the existing tile. We'll then cross-connect at the top end and install a new catch basin. Cost of the project is approximately $40,000. With a portion of the cost, $1,640 assessed in the village of Newberry. The remainder, the $38,360, is assessed to the landowners in Southwest Middlesex. That being said, I guess I'd be happy to answer some questions. Another thing I can mention, in conjunction with this work, it's our recommendation, and I believe there's a maintenance request signed for Mr. Neely to initiate a drain cleanout on the remaining Robinson drain through town. Now that can be done under maintenance. Now this should also be noted, just so everyone is aware, this outlets into the Government 5-6 drain, which our firm has been appointed on. We've had that drain for considerable time. Now, the reason that report hasn't been issued, that drain crosses the CNR railway. And I am aware we will not receive a permit to construct. So that's why that report has not been issued. But the Government 5-6 is still a report that we are working on. But I'll be happy to answer any questions on the report presented here tonight.
Thank you very much. We will ask that those questions come from any of the property owners present. Denny or Jill, can you verify that any are present? Does not appear so.
I don't believe so, Mayor Mayhew.
Okay, thank you, Jill, very much there. The request those for those present to add or remove their names. It's not necessary for us to ask that question in this proceeding. Council, it's our opportunity to ask questions to Brandon through the chair. I'll give you a minute if you'd like to direct those questions. And I'll call again. Any questions from council? Thank you. Seeing none, we perhaps can move on. It is at this point we make a decision. There is a recommendation that council accept the engineer's report in reference to the Robinson drain and refers the bylaw to the bylaw section of the agenda for first and second reading only. May I have a mover for that? Councillor Cowell and Councillor Vink seconded that. Thank you. Last call for questions. Seeing none, I'll call the motion. All in favor? Carried. Brandon, thank you very much for your services.
Oh, thank you.
Council, we're at number 5 in the agenda, the consent agenda. I'll read these. If council wish any taken out, we'll move them to new business and put them in there. The September 29th minutes has circulated. (5B), Southwest Middlesex vouchers. (5C), building report. Oh, yes, Martin, a question?
Yes,
Martin,
I have a question
yeah, is on the vouchers, Martin, or is on the building report?
on the billing report.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Martin.
Oh, okay. I thought it was going to be put aside.
Oh, I can, yes. If you want to do that, you can. Yes, if you'd like to discuss it. Is there action required from your conversation, or is it just
It's a question. It's
Okay,
a question.
We'll take the question now. If there's action required, it would be submitted. Martin, you, out of efficiency, you can go ahead now and ask that question.
Okay, Mayor Allen, I'm just opening it up now. It had to do with, not sure which permit number, I have to look it up here, but it has to do with change of use permit. It was permit number 2021-0065. And it was on Crack Siding Road. And there's a $300 charge. Why is there a change of use permit, and what does that mean? Does that mean the building inspector is involved with this?
I can let Jill answer that. I don't believe Arnie is with us here this evening. Jill, we can defer this, or would you feel comfortable addressing Councillor Vink's question?
So I can aim to. I also see our deputy clerk has joined in, but I believe this is related to one of the applications, the planning applications. Is that right, Denny?
Yeah.
The change of use, and that's one of the conditions with respect to the severance. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. Good. Thank you, Dan. Martin, does that satisfy your request, or any follow-up?
Yes, I did have a quick follow-up, Mayor Allen. So that does mean that the building inspector is involved with this then.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you.
And thank you, Denny and Jill, for clarifying that. 5D, Southwest Middlesex COVID-19 vaccination procedure. Yes, I see 2 hands up. Councillor McGill, I spotted your hand first, followed by Councillor Scholdice. Go ahead, Councillor McGill.
I'd like to pull that one out for a little more
Okay.
discussion.
And Councillor Scholdice, was that your wish as well, Mike?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. I thought maybe it might be. Okay, And 5E, MLHU Section 22 Order, Sports and Recreation Facility. And the MLHU Board of Health Update, September 2022. 2021, it should be. And Kingsville, a letter to Premier regarding the eye care. And regulations under the Conservation Authority.
Councillor,
Yes, yeah, thank you, Councillor McGill, go ahead.
yeah, I'd like us to support the letter to the Premier re eye care in Ontario, the Kingsville one,
I think-
5G.
Yep, I think perhaps in the past we've given another support, but yes, I think the more the better. You'll make that, all right. Make a motion to support that. I'll ask for a seconder for that. Councillor Bartlett, I spotted your hand there first, thank you. Discussion? All in favor of supporting Kingsville's letter to the Premier? Motion's carried. And 5H, council regulations under the Conservation Act Authority. 5I, minister's letter to heads of council regarding construction noise. 5J, resolution, Township of Scugog, restructure, inventory, and inspection. Yes, Councillor Cal.
I'd like for us to pull it out at the end to be able to
Okay.
support it with, yeah, so we'll talk about it at the end.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cal. And we received a thank you letter from the Glencoe Historical Society that the new roof will provide for the protection of documents. Council, may I have a motion to accept the consent agenda with the exception of 5D and 5J? May I have that motion? Yes, Councillor Cal, seconded by Councillor McGill. Questions? All in favor? Carried. Council will look forward to discussing those two items later. Committee of Adjustment, Jill, I kind of keep my eye on you, and there's none, I don't believe. And no public meetings. And under staff reports, there is no fire. And 8B, Jill, substantive presentation here on asset management, and this is an extremely important document, Council. And Jill, I know there's been an onerous amount of work done on this, so if you could walk us through this at this time, we would appreciate it.
Absolutely, Mayor Mayhew. So I just want to kick it off, and then we also have the consultant from PSD who has assisted in pulling together the report for council's consideration tonight. So I want to first start by thanking council for its support in really helping us to move forward and getting to a place where we are able to meet our obligations. So we were successful in getting grant funding. We were supported by council in using some of the funding that we received from the province for efficiency and effectiveness to really move this along. But along with working with a great consultant, and we're thrilled to work with May, who's here tonight, I also want to thank the senior management team, because this was a tremendous amount of work. And in particular, I would say that Greg and Kristen really had to pull together a significant amount of detail and be able to review and fine tune. And we all went through and reviewed drafts, but a significant amount of work for both the finance team and Greg's team in operations that covers the majority of the assets that you have in your asset management plan. So I do really want to thank them as well and take that time to acknowledge and appreciate their their work on this, as it's been many hours and many months. But I'll just start by saying that this helps council to be ready to meet its obligations under legislation, but it also really helps to provide a roadmap for where you're going to go, a really solid understanding of the assets you have in place, and we will only be able to continue to work on this. Not only will we be able to, we're required to continue to maintain and review this particular plan on an annual basis, so that the decisions that get made and new information that comes forward is included in the plan, as well as new obligations that come into effect in 2024 and 2025. So I might just turn it over to May, because she does have a PowerPoint presentation, but I didn't want to let it go unacknowledged that really it's council support and staff that really got us to this place today.
Thank you, Jill, very, very much. May, welcome to Southwest Middlesex. We're very pleased to have you here. We want you to feel right at home and comfortable. It's a very long report. I hope you can abbreviate it because we have lots, but we want to thank you very much for your input in this. And if you could take us by the hand on this, May, and kind of guide us through it, we'd be really appreciated.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank
you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for inviting me today. So I am excited to be bringing forward this asset management plan. So I will share my screen, and just please let me know once you're able to see it.
Yep, you're up there, May.
Perfect. And I'll just blast it so everyone can see. Perfect. Alrighty, well, first and foremost, Jill, you kind of stole my first line there, which was to really give a quick shout out to yourself, to Kristen and Greg, for the amount of effort and commitment that you all put towards this project, because it really allowed us to provide council with this quality report. So kudos to your team for sure. So Mr. Mayor, like you said, it is a hefty document, so I will try to summarize this in about 12 slides. And I look forward to any questions that you guys have.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So in terms of the Ontario Regulation 58817, Jill touched on it just briefly there. The first requirement or deadline was the asset management policy back in 2019 that was adopted and approved by council. And that really held all of the principles and the objectives of this asset management program. What we're presenting to you guys today is the asset management plan that is compliant to that 2022 requirement. Now that requirement or deadline was actually due in 2021, but thanks to an extension, a one-year extension by the province, we were really able to spend a little bit more time with staff to refine the data so that we had more accurate information to work with. So that's why we're providing it to you guys today. In terms of what's in it, the focus is going to be the core assets in this 2022 requirement. Core assets being your roads, your bridges and culverts, your structural bridges and culverts, your water, wastewater, and your storm. Anything else like your machinery and equipment, your buildings, your land improvement assets, and your parks, those are all considered non-core assets, and those will be the focus of the 2024 requirement. Within this asset management plan, we've defined and documented your current levels of service. We've analyzed your inventory in terms of condition information that you have available, replacement cost information, just the overall quality of the data that you have. We've also documented and developed the life cycle strategies that staff employ to maintain, to rehab, to replace, and even to dispose of some of your assets, the costs associated with that. We've also documented how it is that staff prioritize these assets and these projects in terms of the likelihood of failure, the consequence of these assets failing to the services that you provide your public. And we've also documented some of your growth assumptions. So that's all in there in that 100 or so page document. By 2024, you're expected, or staff is expected to do the same exact thing, but incorporate all of the non-core. And we did actually work and refine some of the non-core assets this time around, just not in as much detail as the core. And then by 2025, this is really the last flavor of the AMP, and this is where staff and council will have to define what their proposed or desired levels of service are going to be. And that does actually require a bit of work to be able to define that, and to be able to show that for the next 10 years, you're able to financially achieve and sustain those levels of service. And if you're unable to, you need to be able to define what kind of risk mitigation procedures you can put in place, or what risk you're willing to tolerate. So that's by 2025, so we can worry about that a little bit later. In terms of this plan, as I said, this was the main deliverable, but we've worked with the staff in many workshops to refine the data, to build and document the information that we had. And really the focus of this plan and this overall asset management program is all about services. So we don't really care too much about what this asset is doing. We care more about how this asset is impacting or affecting our services that we're providing. So if you think of your roads and your multi-use paths, your sidewalks, those are all assets that are conduits for your transportation service. If you think of your playgrounds and your parks, your arenas, those are recreational services, or they impact your quality of life. So the focus is always, what is the service that we're trying to provide, and how do these assets fit into that? And there's really three main categories or factors that we looked at in this plan and in the program that we built with the staff. First one is cost. What is the cost of the service that you're providing? And by extension, how much does it cost to actually maintain, rehabilitate, replace, and dispose of these assets? So what's the overall life cycle cost? What's the performance of the service? How well is it performing? And by extension, what's the performance or condition of your assets? And then finally, what kind of risks are you willing to tolerate if this service were to fail, or if these assets were to fail? So those were really the three main elements that we focused on for each of those core assets in detail. I did want to briefly just touch on the responsibilities of council. So as of 2025, so after you've defined your proposed levels of service, it is expected that council will conduct annual reviews of its asset management progress. That's after the 2025. So you will be required to review whether or not you've achieved your proposed level of service. And if you have not, to be able to define some sort of action item to be able to do so. And then after that 2025, asset management plans will be updated at least every 5 years. So all asset management plans are just a snapshot in time. So every 5 years at least, you are updating them, or staff are updating them. And finally, because these are public documents, they need to be uploaded and available to the public on your municipal website. So that's just a little bit in terms of how it works for updating and reviewing the asset management progress. But we'll jump right into the numbers here. Now, I did want to mention that this asset management plan, like all asset management plans, is based on the most available, or the latest available information that we have at that time. So this asset management plan is based on 2019 year-end data, and that is because that was the most complete year that we had to work with. So I'll touch briefly on what your current state of the infrastructure looks like. What kind of improvements can you make to improve the confidence in the decision-making process? And then what does your financial capacity look like in the next 10 years? So in terms of total replacement value, your infrastructure portfolio, the municipality has about $189 million worth of assets, with about 50% of those going to your water and your road assets. And those are some of your biggest core assets in general. In terms of what that looks like for your per household, for your residents, it's about $75,000 just of assets that they share the value of. And that's sometimes hard to explain because it's not the cost of a service like garbage disposal or snow removal. This is just the cost of owning and maintaining these assets. So it is one of the biggest investments that any municipality will make. In terms of the performance aspect, one of the biggest pieces to measure performance is the condition of your assets. So you'll see in that graph at the top, we've got the condition all the way from very poor in the red to the very good in the green. And you'll see that each asset has its own breakdown. And if you go into the asset management plan into each section, there's an even more detailed graph for each category and its own separate segments. So there's more detail in there. It's always important to see where that condition information is coming from. So overall, for your actual asset portfolio, about 75% of your assets are in fair or better condition, which sounds great. But then we have to always be a little bit critical and look at where that condition information is coming from. Where's that source of information? So as you'll see in that table at the bottom, for the road network, it was all age-based assessments. So there was no assessed condition at the time of developing this plan. That being said, staff have just completed a road needs study as well as a sidewalk assessment that will be incorporated for future asset management plans, but also to be incorporated so that they can use it for their own capital plans for budget. If you look at the buildings, machinery, vehicles, land improvements, we worked with staff to upload and update some of that condition just internally, just through their own expertise, which sometimes can be just as good as hiring an external consultant. But then for a lot of the rest of the assets, if you look at stormwater, water, and sanitary, those underground assets, all of them were assessed based on age. So we're taking the age and the service life remaining, and we're coming up with a proxy of condition. And you can see why that's not always the best condition information. You can have assets that far outlive their service life, and they're still in good state of repair. They're still functioning well. And vice versa, you can have assets that were just recently built that are deteriorating much faster than they should be. So that's why it's always important to dedicate time and resource into updating and collecting good condition information. I did also want to mention or point to the buildings, because that will be one of the biggest pieces of or biggest categories for the next iteration of the plan. And for that one, staff are already looking at opportunities to conduct or to contract out a condition assessment for their buildings, so that not only can they get good condition information on the physical structure of the buildings, but they can also break down the building into all of the major components, whether it's HVAC, electrical, plumbing, so that we have better data to go off of, and we're able to be proactive with our capital plans. And that's fantastic. That really puts the municipality ahead of a lot of other municipalities that have not yet even looked at their non-core assets. One other thing to mention as well, especially for the buildings, is it's not just important to look at the physical condition or the structural condition. It's also important to look at whether or not that building meets the needs of the public, if it's functionally still satisfactory. So structure is one thing, but also looking at capacity, looking at the functional aspect. That's a very important piece of this asset management plan, because it's going to ultimately impact that level of service that you're providing to the public. And that was definitely we took a look at that during this process. Now, if you take that $189 million replacement cost value divided by the service life of all of your assets, you get about $4.3 million of annual capital requirements. So this is $4.3 million is how much you need to spend on an annual basis to be able to maintain these assets. And this is factoring in rehabilitation, replacement, and even some disposal costs, as I mentioned. And you'll see in the graph here, it's a 50-year time frame. So it's important to always be looking at the long-term kind of planning horizon. Within the OREG, it only mandates 10-year forecast, but we incorporated both so that we're able to see much, much further into the future. Taking that $4.3 million deficit, subtracting the funding, the capital funding that's available as of 2019, 1.5 million, we're left with a deficit, with an annual deficit of about $2.8 million. So this is the deficit of just owning and maintaining this current active portfolio. This asset management plan does not incorporate growth. So there's no growth aspects or future assets in here. This is just active assets that we currently maintain. And this is the $2.8 million deficit to reach or to maintain your current level of service. So if you're looking at the proposed levels of service in 2025, you can imagine how that deficit is going to potentially increase if you choose to improve some of your levels of service. Now, taking that $2.8 million and looking at how we can bridge that deficit for each of the different assets. So you'll see for your tax funded assets, the recommendation was a 1.8% annual tax change over a 20-year time frame. For your rate funded water assets, 2% over 10 years, and for your sanitary, about 1.7% over the 10 years. And what I wanted to note is this asset management plan does not incorporate one-time grants or one-time transfers into the funding that's available. And that's because those are not consistent or sustainable sources of revenue. And so they're not factored into this plan. However, of course, they will continue to be an essential part of your revenue. The other thing with this annual tax or rate change that you have to keep in mind that by approving this plan, you're not committing yourself or adopting these tax or rate implications. What we're looking at is we're showing that based on this annual deficit and the current inventory that you have to maintain at this level of service, this is what you would need to do to the taxes and rates to be able to bridge that gap. Really, the real key message here is that we cannot continue to build or add more assets without looking at how we can be proactive and maintain our current inventory efficiently. And of course, this tax or rate change will be impacted by the way you prioritize or the way staff will prioritize their assets and projects. And of course, what is the desired level of service at the end of the day. So it's not set in stone. And then finally, just a couple of slides here. In terms of really the biggest takeaways or recommendations from this asset management program and the plan that we developed is first and foremost, data, because garbage in is always going to be garbage out. And so it's important that we're feeding the system and the database reliable, accurate data so that it spits out reliable, accurate results as well. So whether it's updating condition on a regular, frequent basis, updating replacement cost information, or even updating attribute information in general for the assets, it's important to keep that in mind. Another important factor is to look at or to continue to track your current levels of service on an annual basis so that come 2025, you've got a pattern or a trend that emerges from your levels of service, and you can have an intelligent conversation around what kind of proposed levels of service you want to set. And then by 2024 and 2025, you want to look at some public engagement opportunities so that you can get some feedback from your residents in terms of what levels of service are they expecting and what they're willing to pay for. And then, of course, looking at for that 2024 requirement, what kind of information are we missing? If you look at your building condition assessments, for example, that's a good example. Because that will ultimately feed into the accuracy of your information. And then finally, just to wrap up here, that this asset management plan and the program as a whole, it's a living document. It continuously needs to be updated and refined so that we're able to deliver or develop long-term planning that's accurate, that can feed into your capital budget deliberations, and that will allow staff to manage the assets more proactively. And I think that's about it for my presentation. Thank you, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you very much. You did amazingly well. You did that in 18 minutes, and it took a lot longer to prepare it, for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome, most welcome. And Jill, thank you. Jill, we'll ask Council if they have any questions and direct them either to Jill or to May through the chair. And perhaps Jill, in closing, will let you have the final remarks. Council, any questions through the chair to May or Jill? Yes, Councillor Vink, go ahead, and followed by Councillor Bartlett.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. To May, I was wondering why you would not include grants, because we received grants for the water tower, fire hall, children's center. Why that wasn't incorporated into the percentages?
Yeah, thank you.
For you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vink, that's an excellent question. And Jill, you might you might be able to answer a little bit more, but the types of grants that we were able to incorporate would be things like your gas tax, your OSIF, because those are sustainable and consistent forms of revenue that we can rely on. A lot of those one-time grants we don't want to use so that we don't skew the view of this asset management plan, so that we're not using an outlier year that will show either that 1 year you're really in a surplus or you're really in a deficit. So we're trying to kind of average out that view.
Okay. Any follow-up, Martin?
No, not for now.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Bartlett, go ahead through the chair.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Mayhew, to May. You just answered one of my questions. The other one is the replacement cost of the infrastructure of 189 million. Is that the replacement estimated cost for replacement, or is that the current cost of the infrastructure?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So that is the cost of it's the cost of replacing your assets as of today. So the full replacement or reconstruction cost. And for the most part, for your linear assets like your water mains, your sewer mains, your road networks, we utilized project or tender unit prices so that it was as accurate as it can be. And then for other assets like your non-core assets, we utilized kind of historical inflation where we couldn't get a more accurate costing. So that's the first piece of it. And then the second piece of it is we also incorporated rehabilitation costs. So take, for example, any mill and paves that you would have done on your roads, any rehabilitation on your bridges to repair them, those costs would have been included as well into that full replacement cost.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, May. Council, any further questions? Councillor Scholdice, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I see that we have to do an update every 5 years and a review every year. I just wondered what the difference is between an update versus a review.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the update and the review will be after 2025. So it's not as of right now. With the plan, it's something that will require approval from council, and it will require an actual document to be posted on the website, whereas a review does not need to be posted anywhere. It's going to just be an internal review to see whether or not you're meeting that proposed level of service that you've set as of 2025.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, May. Council, last call for questions.
I think Kristen had her hand up there too.
I missed that completely. Kristen first, Councillor Vink, go ahead after Kristen, please. Go ahead, Krista.
Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate for Councillor Vink too, we don't always, it's hard to anticipate the one-time grants that we have to apply for. So it's hard to factor that into the financial equation, and we don't want to sell ourselves short if we don't get the grants. But I think overall, what the upper levels of government are trying to do with this project is to have the assets, basically have councillors realize that there's a cost to all assets, a cost to beyond the cost of the initial purchase to maintain, and you have to plan for the replacement of these. So this is our first step here. And then from here, if we're dealing with a finite amount of funds, we may get to the point where we need to decide what level of service we want these assets to stay at. Do we need to keep all the buildings we have? Do we need to keep all the paved roads that we have? Do we need to keep all the bridges that we have in order to be able to maintain this level of service for the rest of our assets?
Okay.
I don't know if that puts it into a bit of perspective too.
Okay.
We will put this into, or part of this into our operating budget each year going forward as well.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. Greg, I saw your hand, but Councillor Vink has the lead here, so go ahead, Councillor Vink. You have a question?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, thank you, Mayor Allen. To me, I know it's the water sanitation. I don't remember the figures. I think it was 2% and 1.8% increase. That's just for the infrastructure. That would not be increase that you would need to operate those systems. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct, Councillor Vink.
Okay.
That is just to own and maintain those assets.
Yep. Thank you. And Greg, thanks for your patience. Go ahead.
Yeah, and then through you, Mayor, I'll be quick and just sort of touch on the capital aspect of this particular program. Once we, have all our assets and we have condition assessments done on them, this particular document will produce an infrastructure capital plan moving forward. And basically it would be condition based. So it would be what we need to do and our most priorities. So once, just for an example, we're in the process now of doing condition assessments on our roads. It will tell us what roads we need to replace first. And, that is going to be extremely important moving forward because it will produce that capital infrastructure plan, and the continuity of that plan will continue, after all the condition assessments have been put into this document. So it takes some of the subjectivity out of capital planning, and it really will tell council, where they need to spend their money with their capital infrastructure.
Thank you, Greg, very much. Any further questions? Yes, Deputy Mayor Wilkins, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. It's really not a question, more just a comment to May. But May, this is just really what big business does now, correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, could you define what big business means?
I mean assets, amortization, when they need to replace whatever. So am I on the right track with that?
Yes, absolutely correct.
Okay. And May, I will say that years ago with Southwest Middlesex, we adopted a plan where we would whatever the word would be, just evaluate our equipment or our roads or whatever. And then what we did on an annual basis at budget time is that if there were 2 pieces of equipment needed that year, we would put X amount of dollars away in the budget. If 2 roads needed to be reconstructed in any of the towns, we would put that money in the budget that year, some years more than others. So really what you're saying, or what Greg just said, we will be getting back to something like that down the road when we have a better picture of where these dollars need to be spent every year, correct?
That's absolutely correct. So once the data is there and staff are continuing to operationalize this database, they'll be able to just automate a report that will say these are the assets that are slated for replacement or repairing or rehab in whatever year. And then it's up to staff with their expertise to do these events or decide to push it out if they find that there's value in doing others. So you're absolutely correct. That is where we're going.
Okay, thank you. It was a very sobering report, and I know you put a lot of work into it and staff did as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Last call for questions, staff or council. May, the mayor often lets everyone else ask the questions, and I'm always the last. But May, I have one, and it may appear elementary, but it's important to me. As part of the equation, I hope eyes and ears are not left out in assessing assets. I know that we have an actuarial formula to evaluate the status of our assets, but the eyes and the ears still tell a story, and I hope that is part of our assessment. Would you agree? I hope that head is nodding is in agreement.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we used Greg's eyes and ears a lot for this project. So, so absolutely. And that's why I mentioned the expertise of staff, because regardless of the data, we still need that human element to interpret the data, because ultimately staff will know things that we can't quantify in the system. So absolutely.
Okay, thank you. That's comforting to me. Council, there's a recommendation in front of you. It's in your agenda, 2 levels of approval. We want staff's approval on this, which has been forthcoming, and it requires council's approval as well. Would anyone entertain a motion to that effect? Deputy Mayor Wilkins, I see your hand, and Councillor Scholdice, I see your hand as well. For a seconder on this, as a courtesy, I'll entertain a question from anyone. Seeing none, I'll call the motion. All in favor of adopting the asset management plan? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Council, and May, thank you very much. Jill, any parting words on this?
No, I really do appreciate May joining us this evening, and I'm sure she enjoyed the conversation around drainage, but she's probably going to head out of the meeting.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, May, very much. And Jill, thank you. I knew that you'd vocalize that very well. Thank you. Council, we are about to discuss at a council level the vacancy left following Councillor Crother's death. I can think of no better time than this for a moment of silence in honor of Ian. If staff and council could join me in a moment of silence, after which we will discuss his vacancy. We shall remember him in our hearts always. Jill, if you could begin your report and walk us through it. And we must be cognizant of the fact that we were asked to deal with option number 1 first, Council, at the request of Councillor Cowell. If we can discuss, we'll let Jill entertain the report to clarify it to us and perhaps give any of her guidance that she does, and we appreciate. And Jill, we won't lose sight of the fact that option 1 will be discussed, and following which all the council can participate. So Jill, I'll give you the floor.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Mayhew, and thank you to all of council. Certainly was sad circumstances that we have this report in front of you this evening. The council does need to make a decision about how they wish to proceed in filling a vacancy. So I've outlined the options that are available to council given the timelines. There, in general, there's requirements for filling the seat in terms of who is eligible to do so. It's the same as it would be during a regular election. So you have to be an eligible elector during the election in order to be an eligible candidate, and also not disqualified for any other reason. And the legislation really spells out the procedure in the Municipal Act and how to deal with it. So there's a number of sections from 259 on that deal with a vacancy on council. There's generally at a high level 2 options. There's an appointment option, and that's option number 1 generally. And the second option being a by-election. So the options that I have split out for council's consideration relate to the appointment process, because within that, there are at least 3 options that I can see that are available to council if they wish to appoint an individual. So I'll start with those options. The first option, 1A, relates to appointment from the municipal election candidates. So that is an option that is certainly up for council's consideration. And I think, as I understand it, council is going to deal with whether or not they wish to pursue that particular option first. And if they choose not to, then council will, Councillor Cowell would return to the conversation. So appointing from municipal election candidates, how that typically would happen is the next place finisher in that particular ward race, if they are interested in serving, would be appointed. That is can be seen as both the most efficient and most democratic in some respects, because this is an individual who's already run for office and expressed an interest in this seat. The next option is an appointment by call for applications, and this is an option that Southwest Middlesex has chosen in the past, and that when a vacancy was available through a resignation on council, there was a call for applications. This is also somewhat common in other municipalities. We've seen Luke and Biddulph do this recently, where they had a vacancy from a resignation and they put out a call for applications. And generally a process is adopted whereby council then receives applications from interested individuals and then interviews them and then selects them. Through that selection process, you would be interviewing individuals. You would then have the vote on who would be your choice through that process. That vote is in public, just so council is aware. And then there's a direct appointment process whereby council could just choose any eligible elector to serve out the remainder of the term. This might be the least supportable of the appointment options for transparency and democratic reasons. The second option is the by-election option. And again, the legislation speaks to how this must be followed. It's the interplay between the Municipal Act and the Municipal Elections Act in terms of timeline. So the expectation is here tonight that council will declare the seat vacant. And then if a by-election is chosen, there would be a bylaw that needs to be in place before December the 13th of this year. And then within 60 days of passing that, there needs to be a by-election. You can see how that starts to come into the actual 2022 election year as well. If council were to choose that you're close to when the actual municipal regular election process is going to occur. The by-election option would be the most costly method for filling the vacancy, because we would require funds to specifically address that. And depending on how that is done, there would be different costing associated with it. And the most cost efficient and timely, as I've already said, is likely to appoint from the 2018 municipal election candidate that was the next place finisher, but also probably as inexpensive, somewhat longer, is appointing a potential candidate and interviewing for a successful applicant that council then chooses to appoint by a public vote. I tried not to make that too long of a report, and I just provided a high-level summary of it. If council is dealing specifically right now with the option 1A, then I'm certainly available for questions on that process. So I'll hand that back over to you, Mayor Mayhew.
Thank you, Jill, very much. Council, any questions to Jill on this? And perhaps if, yeah, we can focus on her report in its entirety briefly, and then we'll come back on option 1A. Any questions, Council, that Jill may clarify for you? Yes, Councillor Vink, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. To Jill, you mentioned that option 1A would be the least expensive, but yet you recommend that the new council member would be on for October 27th. So they would get paid for the month of October plus one meeting. So I do not agree with your summation that that would be the least expensive.
Yeah, that's a statement. And Jill, if you'd like to respond, go ahead.
Sure. So the least expensive, I would expect that if council were to go through an appointment process whereby they're dealing with applications, you would also have a special meeting to deal with at Councillor Vink, which would incur some costs potentially as well. But it's, I think that you've already got a budget for paying someone in that seat already. So it wouldn't be a new cost.
Okay, thank you, Jill. Martin, thank you. Council, if we could focus on option 1 at this time, because we want to bring Councillor Cowell back into the discussion as soon as possible. Option 1 is the next placed finisher. As Jill, if I could perhaps just introduce option 1A with that question from the chair. And this is, I know that we all know the answer to this, but in terms of transparency, I think it should be asked. In terms of a call for applications, the next place finisher would obviously be privy to such applications as well, would he not be? And if we adopted option 1B, appointment by call of applications, that process is open to anyone, including those who have previously run in an election. Is that correct?
Yes, Mayor Mayhew, that option 1B would allow any eligible elector to put their name forward.
I asked that just for clarification. Thank you. Council, Jill will certainly try to entertain any questions. Deputy Mayor Wilkins, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. Well, I think considering that there's only 1 year left in this mandate, I think the logical choice would be to go with 1A. Councillor Cowell, former Councillor Cowell, my opinion, proved himself to be a very effective councillor last term. I think that there's some benefit, a large benefit actually, to having someone come on this council for the last year of this term that could take off running. I will remind council that there's absolutely nothing in any of the rules that says there can't be a daughter and a father on council. And I'll also remind council that these two councillors, if we go with 1A, will not be in the same ward. So I will be making the motion to support 1A.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilkins. Yes, Councillor Bartlett.
Deputy Mayor just took the words right out of my mouth, so I'll certainly second that motion.
Okay, and Council, is there any discussion?
Recorded vote, Mayor Mayhew, please.
Mm-hmm. And Councillor Stoldice, please go ahead. Oh, Mike, you're on mute there. Just hit that red button there.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I've given this a great deal of thought and have received several phone calls on it. I have no doubt that Rick Cowell could seamlessly slide into Councillor Crother's chair, but I do have concerns about potential conflicts of interest. Not only would this result in a father and daughter serving together on the same council, it would also result in 1/4 of council now being related to our building inspector.
Okay, thank you for the comment. Council, any other questions? Mary Gay, would you like to rebut that? Martin, Very
I'll just remind Council Mayor Mayhew that the building inspector is not employed by Southwest Middlesex. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Good comment. Martin, thank you for your question now at this time, Martin.
Just a comment, Mayor Allen. I can't support the third place finisher. Neither public expects us to be above board and not to have conflict of interest. And we are paying part of the building inspector wages. And to me, I was a property assessor and we couldn't run for office. And so there's a clear line of conflict as far as I'm concerned. And so there's no way that I can vote for this. And we have to vote in the interest of ratepayers. And we have an example of like today with the building report, we have a councillor passing the severance. Then we have the building inspector using the change of use. There's a clear conflict of interest there. And so I cannot support this at all.
Yeah, it's you know, if such accusations, you know, we don't want this to go before an integrity commissioner for interpretation, Martin. So it may appear to you as a concern, but whether it is a definite conflict, I'd be cautious of saying anything. But I respect your concern for a potential conflict of interest. Go ahead, follow up. Yes, go ahead, Martin.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Well, I think you're forgetting, Mayor, that Councillor Krista Powell, Eisenbart, has already declared pecuniary interest in regards to the building inspector. That's already been noted at more than one meeting.
Okay, so she's exonerated herself from that conflict. Councillor McGill, thanks for your patience. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Mayhew. Really, if time and money weren't considerations, and they are, I'd go with option 2, a by-election, but it's just too expensive and it would take too long. But I feel okay making decisions because I was elected to be a councillor, but I don't feel too good about actually picking who gets to be on council, and yet that's the position we're in. But I'm leaning towards option 1B because I know there are other people that are interested in the position, and we probably should be picking, since we're forced into this position, we should be picking, look at the options and pick what we feel is the best one.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cowell. Council, yes, Deputy Mayor Wilkins, go ahead, and followed by Councillor Bartlett.
Yeah, just a comment to Councillor McGill. I agree, Councillor McGill. If it was midterm, I would definitely support that. We only just have 1 year, and this process with B is going to take some time. It's not going to be something that happens in the next month. So then you're probably, with the holidays, you're found yourself into January, and that's not a lot of time for anybody to get comfortable and to know the role, in my opinion. I think we've all been on council long enough to know that that's actually a fact. And there was nothing that prevented either one of these two people from running in the 2018 election. There'll be nothing that won't allow these people to run in the next election. So when you say that we're here to represent the people, but that's what we're doing. We're looking for the most efficient and effective way of replacing a councillor. And I think that dragging this on isn't serving anyone well. That's just my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bartlett first, followed by Councillor Scholdice, and followed by Councillor Vink. Hey, Councillor Bartlett, go ahead. And unmute yourself there, Doug, if you can. There you go. I think we got you.
Sorry, I froze up again. So I didn't catch the last part of that conversation, but With only 1 year left, you have to consider the learning curve as well. And by having Mr. Cowell come on, he's already done the one term, so done.
Well, Doug's freezing up on us there, but I think we got his message there, Council. And I think the most important words were reiterated. And we'll move on. Councillor Scholdice, followed by Councillor Vink. Go ahead, Michael.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. Earlier, I had requested through our CAO the information Councillor Cowell received from the Integrity Commissioner when her husband began working for Southwest Middlesex. Information received at the expense of ratepayers. However, I was informed that she will not be willing to share this information. I agree that this might be the most simple option, but I question whether there could be future ramifications.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Scholdice.
Point of order on that question, Mayor Mayhew.
Okay. Yeah, and what's the point of order? If breached confidentiality, it's up to the councillor, of course, Councillor Scholdice. It's her information. She asked it for her guidance to make a decision, and that decision was left with her, and that information obtained, even though at the council expense.
Mayor Mayhew, that was a uncalled for breach of confidentiality.
Okay. You have one follow-up question, Councillor Scholdice, and Councillor Vink. I haven't forgot your hand up there. A follow-up, Councillor Scholdice.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I'll just remind the Deputy Mayor that we approved it in the vouchers.
Okay. Councillor Vink, thank you for your patience. Go ahead, Martin.
Yes, I just want to counteract a little bit what the Deputy Mayor says. There's no reason why we can't put an ad in the paper. Many ratepayers already know about this. Many of them are probably watching this YouTube, and we could have something in 2 or 3 weeks deadline, and have a meeting the following week, and have someone ready in November.
Thank you. Councillor Bartlett, I saw a movement there a minute ago. Doug, I don't know whether you can hear me or not. We did get the gist of your message, I believe. You did freeze up on us towards the end, and I wanted to give you the opportunity to close that statement. But I know you're having some technical difficulties there. But out of courtesy, I wanted to ask you. Oh, keep trying again. Unmute yourself, Doug, if you can. No, I think we've lost him.
Maybe it would help Councillor Bartlett to just, if he turns off his video, sometimes that it looks like we just lost him, though, briefly.
Yep. And I still see he's on mute, Jill. But I think his message was well conveyed to council, and we had it. Council, are there any further questions on option 1A? Martin, last question, Martin.
Yeah, I just want to point out in interest of fairness, I fully acknowledge that Councillor Bartlett would vote yes on 1A, and I haven't got a problem with including him as a yes vote if he's not able to be on here.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all, Martin. I share the same opinion, and the chair will regard that Councillor Bartlett's vote will construe in favor of the motion. Okay, thank you for bringing that. Is there any disagreement of council to that, Jill? Are we breaching protocol here?
Well, I have heard along with Councillor Bartlett's request. However, you've had a request for a recorded vote.
Okay. Councillor Bartlett, if you can hear us, could you call my cell number, Doug, at 519-872-2730. And Doug, I'll repeat that, 519-872-2730. And Jill, if you could message him to call me on my phone, we'll have an audio there and perhaps we could do it. Council, I'd like to have Doug participate in this. And if Jill could just give him a call. Jill, how'd you make out there? Did you get a message off to him? I'm going to give him a call, see if I can track him down. I see Jill talking
Okay.
here.
Yeah, so I have Councillor Bartlett on my cell phone right now, so he is available. He's just struggling to get in to the meeting.
Thank you, Jill, very much for accommodating us on that. And we certainly want Councillor Bartlett to be a part of this. Last call for questions. And Jill, could you please call the vote?
Okay, so the request was from the Deputy Mayor. So Deputy Mayor Wilkins.
Yes.
Mayor Mayhew.
No.
Councillor McGill.
No.
Councillor Bartlett.
Yes.
Councillor Vink.
No.
Councillor Scholdice.
No.
So the motion is defeated.
Thank you, Council. We'll move on and welcome Councillor Kell back. And 1B, the call for applications that would involve everyone who qualifies without exception. And would Council like to speak to that? Yes. Councillor Vink. And I will follow, when Jill's available, I will ask her to perhaps shed any more light in that. So Martin, go ahead. And Jill, we certainly welcome your comments on 1B as well, in terms of timelines and things like that are a concern to me. Councillor Vink, go ahead and ask your question through the chair.
I just had a comment, Mayor Allen. I'd like to move 1B.
Okay, I'll see if there is a seconder for that. There is. Councillor Scholdice, are you seconding 1B?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for a confirmation on that. We'll open this up to questions now. And Joe, again, any guidance you can give council, we certainly welcome your input in this. Questions?
Yeah, I don't know that I have anything further. I think I will develop the process for council to follow, and if this is the selection that council makes related to an appointment process through application, and then council can work through that process and select candidates.
Okay.
Candidate.
Okay. Yes, Deputy Mayor Wilkins, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. So my question is to Jill. Jill, when we did this last term, when Councillor Kendall resigned, we did exactly the same thing, but the voting took place by a secret ballot. And we can't do that, correct? It has to be an open process and voting will be done in public.
Correct. So the deliberation can be enclosed. You're talking about people. However, the idea around this is to support the most democratic and transparent way. So if council is choosing to appoint an individual, the idea would be that you are making that decision on behalf of the public, and the selection for that
Council, is Jill froze up on me? Is she freezing up on other members? Of the
Yeah, it must be a bad night for the internet.
Deputy Mayor, I wasn't sure whether it was me or sometimes it's me that happens to. And
I think my question was answered. So Mayor Mayhew, the process will be the same, but the voting will have to take place in public. So there'll be no writing the name down on a secret ballot and then counted.
Yeah.
So I'm satisfied with that answer. Thank you.
Any further questions, Council? Seeing none, last call. And Jill, we hope you get back to us. Anyway,
I believe I'm back.
okay.
Oh, you are, Doug.
Is Denny with us? Denny, you may have to fill Jill's shoes here momentarily, okay? Just to witness the vote and to record it in the minutes, the outcome of this vote, Denny. So are you satisfied filling Jill's shoes at the present time?
Yep. So right now we're waiting on council to vote on option 1B.
Okay.
Has anyone asked for a recorded vote?
No,
No, there's not been the request for that.
Well, I will ask for a recorded vote.
Okay. And Denny, I'll let you call it at your leisure.
Okay, starting with Councillor McGill,
Yes.
Mayor Mayhew,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Wilkins,
Yes.
Councillor Bartlett,
Yes.
Councillor Vink,
Councillor Vink, could you unmute your phone? Could you unmute your computer, Councillor Vink?
You are unmuted now.
Frozen.
Yes,
Okay, I heard that. Yep, Denny, did you hear that?
yes. What happened, all of a sudden, split second, I was gone from the meeting.
Okay, Jill, welcome back, Jill.
Okay, so is it my turn to vote, Mayor Allen?
Denny will call it, yes, and yes, Denny can ask again, Councillor Vink, if you'd like.
Councillor Vink,
He said yes.
Yeah, Denny, I did hear him say.
For option 1B, yes.
Okay, it's heard, all right.
Councillor Scholdes,
Yes.
We're all breaking up here.
Councillor Cowell,
Yes.
Councillor Cowell,
I said yes.
and the motion carries.
Thank you, Denny, very much. You have very difficult shoes to fill there. All right, Jill, welcome back.
Thank you.
Okay. We have got that is done. The next on the agenda, with that being completed, that vacancy filled, or that vacancy has a parameters around it now and a procedure to follow. The item number 3 is the meeting calendar that has been prepared. And I want to thank staff for visiting on this. And I believe it was Councillor Cowell who came up with a suggestion of 3 meetings in November and 1 in December. I want to thank her for that. There's a recommendation that the council meeting calendar and conference schedule be received and that the proposed 2022 meeting dates be approved as reiterated in your agenda. May I have a mover for that? Councillor Scholdice, seconder, please. Councillor Bartlett. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? Carried, and unfortunately, Martin is froze up.
Well, Mayor Allen, I did have a question.
Okay, Martin, the vote has been taken, but we'll certainly give you the question, the courtesy of that question. And I'll ask you one more time, Martin. Nope, he's not with us. I haven't looked at the weather. It doesn't look like it's inclement weather out there. I'm not sure what the problem is. Jill, if you could give some direction to council on the municipal and school board election preparation, we'd appreciate this at this time, and we certainly need you for this, so I hope you don't freeze.
Yeah, well, actually, Denny wrote the report for this one, so he'd be well positioned to help take over if I were to freeze up. And it's quite, I think there are solar flares from the sun impacting telecommunications, you know, over the last couple of days. So that we'll blame it on the sun. So with respect to this, I'll just give a high level overview. And if Denny wants to jump in, if council will allow that, we will maybe tag team this a little bit. This is the proposal from staff to have an alternative election similar to what was done in 2014 and 2018. This has been part of a joint effort with a group of all of the local municipalities within Middlesex County, except for the village of Newbury. So the rest of the municipalities within the county, all of the clerks have been working together on this type of effort for the last 2 election cycles. So the rest of the local councils have recently been presented with this option and have moved forward with it as well. And the benefit, I would say, it's fairly great to staff to be able to work collaboratively and work through common issues when you have a common approach. So it's a really big benefit within the county. Not only is the benefit to staff on that front, there is also a cost savings associated with this approach in general, and a cost savings associated with us doing it jointly. So there's a discount to each of the local municipalities in participating with IntelliVote in the process. So I would also offer, I'm not sure it's in the report, but I took a moment to take a look back in previous elections prior to the alternative voting method. And there is an increase in voter turnout when you have an alternative election. And that was certainly the case in 2014 and 2018, higher voter turnout than both 2006 and 2010. So it's our recommendation to move forward as in past years with this approach. And Denny, if there's anything else you'd like to touch on in terms of this alternative election conversation, you want to jump in?
I don't have a whole lot else to add at this point.
Okay. Thank you, Jill. Denny, we may come back to you on that. Council, any questions you'd like to ask Denny or Jill through the chair? Okay. Yes, Deputy Mayor Wilkins, go ahead.
Mayor Mayhew, I will move the recommendation.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Councillor McGill. It is moved and seconded. I'm going to continue with, the chair is going to continue with questions to make sure that we have dialogue on this. Council, any questions? Bill, yes, Councillor Scholdice, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. During the last election, people came into the office and libraries to vote. If COVID protocols remain in place, are we suggesting that these people's only option is to vote by phone? I don't recall this being the preferred method.
Jill, go ahead if you can answer that.
Sure. So the proposal for the alternative election is internet and telephone voting. So it would be the same as in previous years. So telephone is one option, but not the only option available to individuals. So you can do the vote in part by phone and in part by internet. So you can stop partway through the process. I think COVID protocols only support this type of alternative election where you're not having to pull together people in large groups on a particular day to come into one particular place and vote. They can do this from the comfort of their own home. So I think there's elections that have proceeded in this particular way as a result of COVID protocols, actually. But I would still anticipate that we would have a voter help center that would be open to the public, and we would certainly make sure we are following all of the public health requirements associated with anything to do with COVID in protecting the public. But I also think the one big benefit is you don't have to come anywhere else to do the voting. You can stay in your own home to do it.
Okay, thank you, Jill. Council, any further questions? Yes, Councillor Bartlett, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm certainly in favor of this. I know after the last election, I had a number of people come up to me wishing there was some way they could do it the old way in paper. Is that feasible or is that not cost effective?
Yes, Jill, I'll let you answer that.
It is an option, Councillor Bartlett. However, it's not at all included in the cost proposal. So you would need additional resources, including staff and additional staff and additional resources to run a paper ballot alongside an alternative voting method as well. So that's not how we've been budgeting for this particular election, but if council wishes to pursue that, it would be incorporated into the 2022 budget. But there would be the cost of essentially running both types of elections.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Jill, I shared the same sentiments as Councillor Bartlett. At times I've heard that, but last year I must compliment the front desk that they were very helpful to people who wanted to have a personal connection with the municipal office and their vote. And I think we don't want to leave anyone behind in terms of using their right to vote. And I found your words very delightful that there is a process where staff will give assistance on a one-on-one basis to people and walk them through an iPad or something. And I think that's very admirable for our municipality and the relationship between the community and our staff as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing that done, and I hope there's no stops in that amount of assistance that will be given to people to assist them through a digital process. It's music to my ears. Staff, it's been moved and seconded. Are there any further questions? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? All opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Jill, for that very much. And Denny, thank you. 8C building, Jill, there is none. Finance, we don't hear from Kristen tonight. And in operations, we have the Macarthur drain, a section 78 improvement. Andrew, could you walk us through this? And we have Greg on standby if we need him. Thank you, Andrew. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hopefully that the connection will hold. What we have before us right now is a Macarthur drain, section 78, improvement under the Drainage Act. With regards to the background, the Macarthur drain is a drain in the former township of Eckford and was last improved under an engineer's report by Spreet and Associates in 1991. That is a different branch that it dealt with. However, there were no construction or reconstruction projects that were done since 1975. With regards to the last meeting, I had brought the request to council for acceptance. I had contacted the Conservation Authority, and there were no concerns at this point in the process. However, they did indicate that they were interested in being included in the process. And with that as well, I had sent out notices to the property owners on the drain. At this point, it does seem like the reconstruction of the work on the drain would only include Mr. Galbraith's properties that are involved, and that is where we now. I also would like to mention that there is still time for property owners to sign on for reconstruction or any other works done to the drain as we go forward. But it is my recommendation that council appoints Spreet Engineering under section 78 of the Act to produce a report to reconstruct, it should say reconstruct, a part of the Macarthur drain based on the request that Mr. Galbraith had submitted April 29, 2021.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions you wish to direct to Andrew through the chair? Seeing none, I'll entertain that someone move the recommendation. Thank you, Councillor McGill. A seconder for that, please. Oh, and if that's a question, Mark, I'll get back to you, Councillor Vink. We'll certainly call for questions on this now. Councillor McGill, did I miss a question from you?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, through the mayor, I'd just like to ask Andrew. So I believe in the recommendation, the request was received April 29th, 2021.
Yes, you through you, Mr. Mayor, it was just a typo. It was 2021. Okay. It wasn't last year.
And then down under analysis where it says, at this point, the project appears to only include the properties that Mr. Arthur owns. That should be Mr. Galbraith, I think.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor McGill, I assumed that you moved that motion. I don't want to assume that incorrectly. That's okay with you? Thank you. Okay, and Martin, you seconded that. Thank you very much. We'll continue with questioning to Andrew. Council, any further questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of the section 78 be approved? Motion is carried. Andrew, could you walk us through the Macarthur drain, section 78?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will start off with the background. The Macarthur drainage works in former township Eckford was last improved under an engineer's report by Corbett Engineering dated June 10th, 1957. It doesn't appear that there were any other further improvements done to this drain since then. However, there have been different repairs and cleanouts to this drain. And the analysis, this council has seen a number of requests to enclose drains like this, predominantly because of the size of farm equipment that we're dealing with now. Drains that cut off a corner of properties are no longer feasible because farm equipment are no longer able to get into those pieces of property like they did when they were originally constructed. And I would also like to note that at the time of writing the report, we could have a real scoping meeting on site with everyone being on the drain invited. However, as we know, things can change week to week, month to month. So I would like to keep it open for the possibility of notices being sent out indicating that we have received this request and indicate to staff if there's any other works that they would like to see. And it is where I would like to recommend that that council accept the request filed under 78 for the McTaggart drainage works for range 2 north, south part of lot 14, and for the staff to contact the Lower Thames Conservation Authority to ensure legal compliance and any other issues that they may bring up. And that staff send out notices or have a meeting. And then after which that I would bring all of this back to council with a better idea of what other properties would be interested in this enclosure beyond what we have before us right now.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew. And it's good news that a scoping meeting may be a potential possibility.
Right.
We know it's a fluid situation, but it's nice to envision that. Council, any questions you wish to me to direct to Andrew on the McTaggart drain? Yes, Councillor McGill, followed by Councillor Fink.
I can move the recommendation.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mark. Councillor Vink, you'll second that?
I had a question. Sorry, Mayor Allen.
All right. I'm in the process. I have a motion on the floor, so I'm going to ask a seconder, then I'll come back to it. Councillor Cal, I may have seen your hand too. Mike, you'll second that? Thanks very much. Councillor Vink, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Allen. Thank you to Andrew. You may have already mentioned this, but this closed-in session, does this involve only one owner?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, at this point, we only have an indication of an enclosure for this one property that I've included in the map. I have highlighted it in the dotted blue line. However, there is an enclosed portion that continues on, which is also owned by the same owner. However, he didn't indicate any works of improvement through that other property to the northeast. And that's where the scoping notice or meeting would determine if the works are going to go beyond this one property.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Councillor Cal, out of courtesy, did I see your hand go up? Okay. And Mr. Storms, I might have seen your hand go up. I'm not sure if you're pointing to your dog or something. Okay, you're all right. I didn't want to overlook you, Greg. Last call for questions. It's been moved and seconded. I'll call the vote. All in favor of the section 78 on the McTaggart. Raise your hand, please. Carried. Operations report number 3. Water and wastewater contract negotiations with Aqua. Greg, if you could walk us through this, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, and thank you, Mayor Allen, and through you to council. I will kind of preface my report. I certainly don't have to make council aware that we do have our legislative requirement as the owner of a water and wastewater system to make sure that it is looked after, and we have an operator in place that's confident and certified. The other point, there are a couple of points, is that at the beginning of the report, I do talk about this timeline up until December 2022, but we all know that there will be an election in November. So this, this timeline will not be as long as what we have in front of us, considering there may be times where this council could not deal with this type of matter. The other thing to consider is I did put a fair bit of research into this, and there have been a number of municipalities that have gone through this process. And we really kind of piggybacked a lot of information that has been created within the municipal environment. The other thing that I got out of that research was that a majority of the municipalities of our size typically have contracted operators in place, and the larger municipalities tend to have in-house operations for the operations of their systems. And there are a number of municipalities out there as well that have both. So certain parts of the system would be taken care of by private operators, and others by an in-house type arrangement. So I will kind of step through the report quickly. The current contract that we have in place with Aqua is we have a notification clause in that contract, so we must notify them one year prior to the contract closing, and that's why this report is in front of us tonight. I have shown you the clause basically that I extracted from the contract. From the research that we've done, we have two options. Option one would be notification on an RFP process to select an operator of all our water and wastewater systems. The RFP would have to be established by an outside consultant. And we do have firm numbers on this from the other municipalities that have put this on the market or have gone out just to find out pricing as part of their decision-making process. So we're looking at about $80,000 to $100,000 for the creation of an RFP. That doesn't include the actual process for the operator. That still would have to happen after the RFP was created. The second option we have in front of us is to approve Aqua as a single source vendor and have a direct negotiation for the renewal of the current contract. If this was the option the council chose, we would then report back to council with our findings. I've taken extractions out of the procurement policy with regard to single source purchases, as well as the direct negotiation on an item like this, just for council's information. And I will take you now to the general comment section of the report. Option one, the creation of an RFP. The RFP creation process is expensive. And that type of money, in our particular budget is a lot of money for just the creation of the RFP. The other thing I will make comment, and this is sort of comments that I've summed up from the research that I did on this particular file. There has been an increase in mergers and acquisitions in the private sector. And that market has been just somewhat unstable over the last five years or so. But currently there are 3 providers in the current private market. I will make a comment just with regards to Aqua. Aqua is a quasi-government agency. It's just a little bit different than the actual private operators that are out there. So the option 2, the single source to Aqua with the direct negotiation for new contract. As I mentioned, Aqua is a nonprofit provincial crown corporation that provides unique benefits in the Ontario market that other private companies cannot, such as essential services designation and tax exemptions. A perfect example of this would be then anytime Aqua buys something for our system, they receive the same tax reductions that a municipality does, because under tax laws, they are considered to be a municipal body. Aqua operates 80% of the outsourced water and wastewater third-party operations and maintenance contracts, which represents about 37% of the entire Ontario market. There's no doubt they are a market leader in providing these services. Aqua offers economies of scale and purchasing power, in addition to large synergies in utilizing their experience and expertise that no other competitive can offer. Aqua currently services our neighbors, our provider of water at the Tri-County Water Board, the municipality of West Elgin, just recently at Adelaide Metcalfe, and in Southwest Middlesex. And we receive efficiencies because of this service in adjacent municipalities. A perfect example of that would be that, last evening, we did have a water break at Dean Street in Glencoe. Aqua staff are on site till 4 o'clock in the morning with our staff. And if we had an issue first thing this morning in any part of our system, they would have borrowed from our neighbors to help us out. So those type of efficiencies are available because of the relationships that we have with our neighbors and with decisions that those local councils have made. So I will take you back, generally to my, or take you back to the recommendation that I have in front of council tonight. Is the council approves the single sourcing with the Ontario Clean Water Agency, Aqua, and that is to secure and supply the safe drinking water and wastewater treatment operations. And the council approves the CAO clerk and the director of operations to enter into the direct negotiation with Aqua, and that this negotiation be presented to council for contract execution. And that council consider reserving the savings, $80,000 to $100,000 that would have been expensed for the creation of the RFP. Through you, Mary Ellen, that is my report, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Greg. It's an important subject. Council, any questions you'd like to direct to Greg through the chair? Yes, Councillor Vink, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. To Greg, you mentioned about single source, and then they had to be notified by December. So isn't that a little harder to negotiate with someone when they know they're going to be the only provider?
It's coming back to council. They're going into negotiations with Aqua, and the results of those negotiations will be coming to council for a decision. Greg, can you elaborate any more on that?
Yeah, through you, Mary Ellen. I think this particular type decision gives us leverage in the direct negotiation. So if we were just bringing an offer that was presented by Aqua with numbers to it, we wouldn't have any leverage. It would just be something that we're presenting. But, this is a serious issue that we're all faced with, which is to make sure that we provide safe drinking water and wastewater system that serves all the residents in Glencoe and the Wardsville area. So, this type of process where single sourcing would be decided will give us some leverage with Aqua moving forward.
Thank you, Greg. Well, they're not the only one, Councillor Vink, but they're one of a few. And I think the decision ultimately will rest with council, but I think there's benefit of that. Councillor Scholdice, go ahead, Michael.
I appreciate that we're being told, thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I appreciate that we're being told we're saving $80,000 here for not putting out an RFP, but I'm just curious, how long would it take to put out an RFP, circulate it, and have council consider options?
I'll let Greg answer that question. Councillor Scholdice, Greg, could you respond to that?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Ellen, the creation of an RFP like this would take about 3 months. We have that experience in the creation of the modeling RFP that's ongoing right now in the municipality. Then there would have to be the process, and then that information would have to come back from council to council for their movement of it forward. But even in an RFP process, nobody can ensure that anybody's even going to participate in the process. So, I mean, I wouldn't know what the end result would be to that, but certainly we have a fair bit of experience with the creation of an RFP like this, which would be around 3 months.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Greg. Any further questions? Councillor McGill, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. Through the mayor, I'd like to ask Greg, how long would this contract be with Aqua?
Through you, Mary Ellen, I'm sure that would be part of the negotiations. That would be council's choice in the end as far as the term is concerned. There have been municipalities that have just joined on that with new 10-year deals with an option for 10 years of renewal. I'm not sure we would end up there, but those options would be presented back to council.
Yes, a follow-up question, Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, how long was our previous contract with Aqua? How many years?
I don't know. I may need Jill's help on this one. I think it was 3 years or 5 years.
Oh, through you, Mayor Mayhew, I believe it was 5.
Thank you, Jill. Yeah. That's
And I
great.
just wondered how long total have we been with Aqua?
Well, through you, Mary Ellen, at this level, we did have an amendment to the contract when we made some changes internally. That has been in my time. So at this level, it's been 3 years with this complete contract.
Yep. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Deputy Mayor Wilkins, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. Just to further Councillor McGill's question, we've been with Aqua since we amalgamated, Councillor McGill.
Yep. And Council, any further questions? It's an important topic. Councillor McGill, last question, go ahead.
I'm prepared to move the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder for that?
I'll second it.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Wilkins. Council, just remind Council that it's very beneficial. They are the operators of our water treatment plant, so it's good synergies are involved there. Okay, I don't think I missed anyone. Doug, you're okay? No problem, no questions? Okay. I'll call the question. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion is carried.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Greg. Notice of motion. I was very pleased to see this come forth regarding getting support for the situation we have regarding drains under railway crossings. Deputy Mayor, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, I would, Mayor Mayhew. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I'm bringing this matter to Council again for consideration now that we have a clear position of the CN Railway related to the Drainage Act in Ontario. In short, all railways have participated as partners in the Drainage Act process up until very recently. Over the last 2 years, many municipalities, and ours included, as we heard again tonight, across the province have been experiencing issues with maintenance work and issues with construction of new drains and collection of assessed costs to railways for the Drainage Act. Railways are frustrating construction and maintenance works under the ministry's Drainage Act, and the railways are refusing to pay their assessed costs related to municipal drains. We have raised this issue with the Ontario ministry responsible for the Act, and I am hoping that Council will support my motion to continue to raise this issue to support all landowners who benefit from the Drainage Act. Thank you very much, Mayor Mayhew.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilkins. I understood the Drainage Act was the Drainage Act of the province of Ontario, and I thought if you're in Ontario, you would have to abide by it, but the railways sometimes think otherwise. Maybe we'll certainly find out their mindset on that. Council, any questions you'd like to direct to Greg, Andrew, or to the Deputy Mayor? Please go ahead. Councillor Cal, I see your hand. Go ahead.
I'd like to second the motion of the Deputy Mayors.
Thank you. That's great. Further questions? None? Yes, Greg, certainly speak to this if you would. Yeah.
Yeah, and just through you, Mary Ellen, and further to the Deputy Mayor's comments, I mean, I really like the fact that this motion is on the floor. Not only are we experiencing issues with both railway companies with regards to municipal drains, and farmers in our particular municipality are seeing projects stand still and not get completed. We have close to 40 crossings. I believe it's around 40 crossings in our municipality. And, we have culverts on each side of these crossings that flow water through the railways, through our road systems. And, we're even having trouble getting them to replace culverts that are on their own property. And if we're just dealing with one and it was $20,000, which is probably, an underestimate of what we've got in front of us, we're talking millions and millions of dollars that the residents of Southwest Middlesex and the general taxpayers would be responsible for replacing these culverts if we can't get some movement from the railway companies And it's really not fair. It's something the general taxpayer shouldn't have to pay for in this municipality. So I applaud this recommendation that's on the floor right now.
Thank you, Greg. Last call for questions. The motion has been moved and seconded. I'll call it. All in favor? Motion is carried. And thank you, Council. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Correspondence and petitions. Jill, I have none down here. And unfinished business, Jill, I have none. New business, we've moved 5D and 5J. 5D, we certainly look forward to your comments on this, Mark. 5D, to refresh Council's memory on this, COVID-19 vaccination procedure. Mark, would you like to speak to this?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Mayhew. This right at the top of the report, it says employee and contractor vaccine. And I think if we are going to ask our employees and contractors to follow these conditions, we as councillors should be willing to too. So I would like that somehow added. I know our council has been divided on quite a few things, but as far as I know, we're all in favor of people getting vaccinated. So I was hoping we could get something added to cover councillors too.
Okay. Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, Councillor McGill, are you making that a motion? If you are, I'll second it.
Okay.
I will.
I was just going to ask him. I saw your hand go up. I was just going to give the courtesy of Councillor McGill, if it was a motion. And thank you, Deputy Mayor, for seconding that. I will ask for questions now. Yes, go ahead, Councillor Cowell, and followed by Councillor Scholdice.
My question is this necessary for all in-person events or like access? So my concern isn't so much for us as a group, because I mean, I'm vaccinated. I don't know about the rest of you folks, but I'm concerned if we are asking people who are participating virtually, do they need to also show proof of vaccination? And I don't specifically mean like our council, but we do have a lot of subcommittees, and I have seen that vaccination policies have extended to some of the committees of council. And I'm mindful of that, especially when a lot of our committees are virtual in nature and they don't intend on moving forward into the in-person sphere. So I'd just like to make sure that it doesn't include our committees of council, or at least it doesn't include our virtual participation.
Jill, could you clarify that? Councillor Cowell's concerns?
So really, this is completely up to council to decide what they would like to do for themselves and for representatives on committees. The procedure that was put in place and endorsed by the Emergency Control Group, it specifically right now relates to employees and contractors. And it is about, you know, the fact that we interact with the public a great deal, and we interact with one another in the workplace, trying to make sure that we're doing what's been strongly recommended by the medical officer of health as well, and putting forward a vaccination policy in place. So it would be up to council if they wish to be included in this procedure as you know, making the workplace safe for the health of both each other, staff, and the public. And if you wish or do not wish to extend that to committees, that'd be up to council to decide.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Councillor Cowell? No. Okay, thank you very much for the question. Council, any further questions? Yes, Councillor Scholdice. I'm sorry, I missed you there, Mike. I knew you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. It wasn't specifically to Councillor McGill's motion, but about the vaccine procedure in general. If that's all right, if I ask that now.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I just wondered, is this the same procedure that the county is following, or have we made any changes to it?
Jill, can you answer that at all? It is. I do not have that document in front of me, and I knew it was an extensive document, Mike, and I believe as it sits right now, it's similar. Jill, can you add to that?
Actually, I'm not aware of the counties, if it has adopted this particular procedure for its employees.
Discussion, but yeah, it has not received the sent follow-up, Michael. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I just wondered, is there any of our neighboring municipalities that have this same procedure, or anybody else that's using it?
I believe, there is the province, of course, they're using it, but Jill, I'll let you reiterate on those others in Middlesex County.
Sure. So my understanding is that Middlesex Center was probably the Thames Center was likely the first to have this in place, and then Middlesex Center. I believe that Adelaide Metcalf has put a policy in place. I'm not sure that it's exactly the same as the other two, but they did deal with that recently, and North Middlesex is either considering this or is putting this in place as well. Not sure where Strathroy Caradoc sits on it at this point. But yes, I'm certainly aware. I'm aware of Elgin County's procedure and what they're requiring, as I have engaged with their HR manager in Elgin County, and they put something similar in place. So, and certainly, we see the news and see that some of the larger municipalities within Ontario have adopted this quite a few months ago as well. So City of London has a policy in place, City of Ottawa, City of Toronto, places like that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Council, any further questions to Jill on this? Jill, I had a concern expressed from the Historical Society. They are one of the organizations that are meeting in reality, and they asked if this policy would affect them, and I thought not. I thought that would be a decision that would come from their own engagement with their members. Is that not correct?
You're correct, Mayor Mayhew.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Yes, Councillor Vink, I saw your hand go up. Yep, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Allen, to either yourself or Jill. I see the part about contractors and subcontractors. Let's just use, for example, Omega Company. They've got quite a few workers working on Main Street. How would this affect them?
Yep, Jill, go ahead if you'd like.
Through you, Mayor Mayhew, that's a good question, Councillor Vink. So what we're asking is not for individual vaccination information from every individual employee from a contractor, but an attestation from the through the contract that they will only send employees who are vaccinated. So for instance, we have made this known to, say, Aqua staff and MEU staff, county IT staff, just as examples of some of the contractors. So that's all we're asking for from them. We're not requiring that they put in place a mandatory vaccination policy in their workplace. We're requesting that they provide us with an attestation that they will only provide employees for them that are vaccinated.
Thank you, Jill. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. So just as an add to that, Mayor Mayhew, you will remember when you and I worked at the first vaccine clinic in Glencoe at the fire hall, that Omega did in fact send employees up who hadn't had their shot yet. And I thought that was worth noting. I think a few of them came back for their second shot the second time, but I thought that was important to note that. Thank you for letting me do that.
Yep, thank you for that comment. Okay, last call for questions. And we have an amendment that council be included in this recommendation. Is that correct, Councillor McGill? And the seconder for that, yes, Deputy Mayor. Okay.
Get a
And,
recorded vote, Mayor Mayhew, please.
Yep. Jill, I'll let you proceed at your leisure. I'll ask Jill to call the question. Councillor Cowell, have you a question there before we begin? Yes, go ahead.
So I can appreciate, and maybe it won't have any impact, but I can appreciate that we are making a decision, but we are about to have a new team member on the team. And is that something that will be, so it goes back to my initial question, is if they never come into the building and they always stay online, do they need to be vaccinated to be sitting at the table? Or is it just they have to be vaccinated if they decide to like come in and do physical meetings?
Yes, go ahead, Jill.
So the intent of the procedure for employees, and I'm just making the assumption that this is the direction that the motion is being made for, is that that employees are they do regularly interact with individuals on the staff team as well as members of the public, and that's why there's a mandate to be vaccinated. We really don't have too many positions in our workplace that would never interact with the individuals of the public or other members of staff. Same with contractors. But there may be some, but that's not the approach that this is taking. This approach, whereas some workplaces are saying, you have to be vaccinated to come back into the office, or you can continue to work remotely forever and not come back. That's not an option that we're envisioning for our workplace, just doesn't quite fit with the kind of service we provide. And if I could speculate on the Councillor McGill and Deputy Mayor's motion to be included, it's because you're also interacting with the public and one another, and with staff, and it's about protecting the health and safety of everyone in the workplace.
Thank you, Jill. Just for council too, I remind you that though we are meeting virtually very often, and I hope it's the case that councillors, though we meet virtually, very often come in and out of the office in meeting with administration and discussing issues. And so we are councillors, but we find ourselves within an office environment, I'm sure, quite frequently. No more questions. The recommendation has been amended to include councillors. I'll call the question now. And it is a recorded vote, and Jill will do it at her leisure.
Okay, so we'll start with the requester. So Deputy Mayor Wilkins?
Yes.
And Mayor Mayhew?
Yes.
Councillor McGill?
Oh, sorry, yes.
Councillor Cowell?
Yes.
Councillor Vink?
Yes.
Councillor Bartlett?
Yes.
And Councillor Scholdice?
Yes.
And the motion carries.
Thank you, Jill. Resolution 5J, Township of Scugog, requesting that the province divvy up for inventory. Councillor Cowell, would you like to speak to this?
I just was mindful at the end of it, it talks about they're asking the the province of Ontario and the government of Canada to encourage providing funding for rural municipalities to support infrastructure projects related to bridges, culverts replacements. And when we talked about our asset management plan and we looked at that sliding scale, a lot of what we need money for is that. So I was like, this is timely that we are getting this motion from Scugog, and at the same time, we're talking about our own asset management. So I'd like to support their request that the government consider additional funding, because while it's not part of our asset management plan, I can appreciate that we all know that many of these projects won't get done without support from upper levels of government.
Thank you. I trust I can identify that as a motion you've made. And is there a seconder for that? Councillor Vink? Any questions? All in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? Motion's carried. Okay. We have county council and conference updates. None. Are there any announcements, council? Yes, Councillor Cowell, go ahead.
I'm not sure it's announcement or new business, but I did not have the opportunity to address Councillor Schuldeis's comments because I did have a conflict of interest. And so he brought it up in a fashion that did not allow me to make a comment, which I thought was disappointing. There was a lot of accusations levied towards me, and I just wanted to point out that on a regular basis, I have the opportunity to speak with Councillor McGill, Councillor Bartlett, Councillor Vink, and I've even in the past, rest in peace, Councillor Crothers, and would, before COVID, meet with them and have conversations. On a regular basis, I would call or perhaps text other councillors. I regularly have called Councillor Schuldeis and received no return phone call, no answering of my phone. He at no point has asked me anything directly or sent me emails in over a year, I would suspect. That wasn't a group email. So it's disappointing that many accusations were levied against me that have no foundation, without actually bothering to have a conversation with me. So I'm disappointed, and my door's always open. I try to be as transparent as possible. So pick up the phone, give me a call.
Okay, good. No, I compliment you on that invitation, Councillor Cal. Thank you. Council, we have agreed to, we're going into closed session, and we're moving those bylaws up to accommodate the public. If we can just jump to number 16, the bylaws. The bylaws are before you, very well laid out. Would someone entertain a motion to move the bylaws as presented? Councillor Cal,
I'll move them, but I'd like to remove the McFarland Swampeg culvert to support Councillor McGill's conflict.
Thank you. And Councillor Schuldeis, I'm going to interpret that as a seconder for that.
Yes.
And we have removed the McFarland Drain Swampeg culvert. And I'll call the question, and we can bring Councillor McGill back into the meeting. All in favor? Councillor McGill, you're not supposed to vote on this.
Oh, you're okay. We're voting on.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. Oh, okay. We're voting on
all of them, but the McFarland Drain.
All of them, but that. Then, Councillor.
Okay,
McGill.
then I can't.
We're doing them all. Okay, move the bylaws, and thank you, Council. Is carried, and we'll now vote on the McFarland Swampeg third reading.
So moved.
Okay, thank you. A seconder. Councillor Doug Bartlett, thank you. Discussion. All in favor? Carried. Okay. We can go into a motion that council go into closed session as per section 2392 of the Municipal Act. Proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or a local board. And may I have a motion to that effect? To discuss a property matter, moved by Doug Bartlett, seconded by Councillor Martin Vink. Question? All in favor? All opposed? Councillor Cal, I think you might have froze on me there. Okay, good. No, you're okay. I got you. Yeah, I didn't see any movement there. I thought you might have frozen. Okay, the motion is carried, Council. Deputy Mayor, if you take the gavel, that'd be great.